First thing is first. I've gone through most of your, that little bit of time, their intervention time, through most of the worksheets for the video. And as long as I can see, you know, hey, there might be one or two you missed. I know they go through the questions pretty fast. And you might have missed one if you're trying to write the other. So there's were 20 points. I get a point up here and there, but most people did really well on. As long as I can see, you got most of it. I get the idea that it's gonna be hard to get all of it. And oh, one thing about that. Who is the big hero who part of the force to take beautiful Fort Ticonderoga right here and then help organize getting the cannon to Boston, which would turn the tide for Washington and Boston? Who is the hero? Because it's really ironic. You remember the hero was? Yeah, Benedict Arnold. After the Revolutionary War, his name would become synonymous in the US with what? He's a traitor, one of the most famous traitors. He's one of the biggest heroes of the Revolutionary War. Benedict Arnold. What? After the United States declared independence, what city did the British invade almost immediately after? Say it again? Yeah, New York City. And did Washington hold out in New York City? He came this far from losing the entire war. This in fact, that goes. But they barely held out. I've been waiting for this pass all day. It's going in the scrapbook. That's where I keep all the things for the scrapbook right there. All right. Don't make me. So let's go and take your notes out. Got a few notes I gotta take. I gotta fill in a few blanks. I think if I get through I didn't do 2 videos. I got a little bit out of whack. If you were gone on Friday, the videos were 20 points. It is on Teams. Did you watch it on Teams? Did it work out okay? Yeah. Yeah, that's where I got it. And it was not too fuzzy or anything. Good. I really like that video, but I know they make a few mistakes, but you know, nothing major. Do a good job. So we just gotta get a few things. So the conflict ignites that first video we saw. And we talked about the French and Indian War, watching it starting it. What city, let's see if we remember, what city in New France fell that would have lead to the victory of Britain over France and the colonies? What very important city? Yeah, Quebec. When Quebec fell. So the war was that was 1759. By 1760, Montreal had fallen, and that was basically it for New France. There'd still be fighting in Europe. Frederick the Great. Berlin was occupied by the Russians. It was an amazing fight. But the Treaty of Paris of 1763, there's actually 2 treaties, but this one we care about. It was a clear British victory. And Britain got these things after the French and Indian War. This is what we have to get for your notes. All the areas in pink on that map, British got a massive victory, including Florida. Huge. France had the choice: keep this or keep 3 islands in the Caribbean. And they kept 3 islands. This is another one. You only need to know 3 islands in the Caribbean. I'm giving what they called it then, West Indies. You don't need the names. Guadeloupe, Martinique, and Santa Lucia. Santa Lucia. My French is wrong. I only just knew enough French to say like 5 words. I'll go to France. I speak French and everybody says. Trust me. So back here. Why they keep those islands? What? Rock in the Caribbean was worth its weight in gold. What's that? Indigo. Indigo is valuable, but even more valuable than indigo. Tobacco couldn't grow there. Sugar was everything. They got more money. In fact, those 3 islands made twice as much money as all New France at that time. So that's why they kept it. And okay, now Canada is a very wealthy country, much richer than there, but not in 1763. Now, you might be wondering, reason? Why do we need to know this? You know, who cares what France got? This is American history. France holding these 3 islands would be decisive for the victory of the United States in the Revolution. Decisive. One of the key reasons the US became independent were these 3 little islands. And to make sure that Britain didn't get, France gave Spain the claim to Louisiana. The claim. You notice I said the word claim. What's Louisiana? As you can see behind this little box, and I have no idea why my computer does this. It just means we're recording. The French made claim all tributaries of the Missouri River. Basically, Champlain just said it's all ours. So they never actually bothered to ask the people there. They didn't even walk through it. They claimed everything. See where you're sitting? You're sitting in that Louisiana. But it'd be in yellow. You're in it, because we're in part of the tributaries of the Missouri River. So when the United States would purchase the land claim in 1803 from France, they'd claim the land you're sitting. But that's just a claim. To the European point of view, there are people living here. So whoever has a claim is going to conquer it, and the United States is going to brutally conquer this land. But that's coming down the road, obviously. Big deal. But don't forget the British was in, they were in a massive amount of debt. That's when they started forcing the taxes. Now, let's see if we remember. What was the name of this confederacy here? What was it called? When they tried to fight back against the British, realizing without the French, we're going to lose our land. Do you remember the name of that? It was something rebellion, even though rebellion's a very British name. Oh, yeah, Pontiac's Rebellion. Yeah, I'm just reviewing really quick, kind of putting it all together in one strip. Oh, look at this map. That's 1770. Isn't that a good map? They were map makers. This is really accurate. They knew the mouth. They knew where the latitude of the Columbia is. So they just kind of Columbia and just river. And they stuff. There's stuff up here, so we just kind of guess. But this, Great Lakes, kind of amazing. So Pontiac's, a rebellion is what the British call it, because rebellion implies that it's this confederacy was rebelling against the rightful owners of the land, the British. War is a better term, because to the Confederacy, it was our land, and we're fighting for our land. It's a war. The British called it a rebellion. Do you remember the name of the, well, it was a law by edict by the king that said no settlement west of the Appalachian Mountains. Remember that term? What is it called? Proclamation of. You're so close. I think you might have said it. 1763. 1763. So remember, for everything that happened, Stamp Act, Sugar Act, all these things, the British would, the colonists would say, how dare they tax everything? And they stole our land. Did the colonists follow this law? Out of heck with it. Do you remember the name of the most famous person who broke the law and tried to settle in Kentucky? Yeah, Daniel Boone. All right. So let's get to that British imperial policy, remember mercantilism. I don't need to tell you the Sugar Act, we did that already, remember, so just review Sugar Act. It was 1763, took effect in 1764. But I do need to tell you one thing. Okay, there's smugglers on ships. How do you stop smugglers? Well, you have to stop the ship and search it. But in British common law, if you search somebody's private property or land, you need a what? A warrant. So what did they give? They gave British colonial officials and the Royal Navy, it's called a writ of assistance. And that's what we need. A writ of assistance, a blanket search warrant. So no court's needed. You can search anybody you want to. Everyone got that? So they gotta have writ of assistance. Can you imagine how infuriating this would make people? So you're not secure in your own home. you're not secure in your own property, even though they went there for the rights as Englishmen, and they would say over and over again, our rights as Englishmen are being infringed. But not only that, what a great way to get rid of political enemies. Just constantly search and harass them because you got a blanket search warrant. Anything you want. You see the very, so, gun. So when James Madison wrote the Bill of Rights, which would be the first, he wrote 12 amendments, 10 will be ratified to the Constitution, 1790, Fourth Amendment, no illegal searches or seizures without a warrant. Why? Those writ of assistance. Virtually every part of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, are going to be a direct reaction to what the British had done or what happened in Britain. Oh, here's King George. This is the anti-sugar, saccharides, sugar. King George, and that's supposed to represent the Tea Act. How do we know this is the Tea Act? I'm sorry, the Sugar Act, because she's drinking tea with sugar in it. And you see her teeth. What does sugar do to your teeth? Once they got sugar, can you imagine what happened to teeth? If you had 3 opposing sets of teeth by the time you're 60, you're really lucky. That's 60. So pretty good. And what color your teeth going to be? The joke was black. It's black because it's all water. To this, one more law we did not get in the video I have to mention. So British imperial policy was to suck money out. They passed the Currency Act. Let's review. Do you remember the term for a gold or silver coin that has its value in the coin? You remember that term? Specie. What is it in term? It should be very easy for when the value is represented by a piece of paper or, currency. So what did the British said? No colonial currency. Here's New York currency from, so this is from 1771. They're violating the law. But they also said no more Spanish money, no more Dutch money. Only British specie by year. That's it. Why? So that the taxes have to be paid in specie. So that meant any other money they want to pay for the tax won't work. All the other currency, worthless. You have to get specie to pay your taxes. Remember I told you currency and money gets its value from taxes? You got to pay it, so you got to get this money. Well, now all colonial currency is worthless. All other currency or species worthless. Only gold or silver coins. What happens to the amount of money in circulation? If only one type of money drops like a rock, what do we call that? What happens to the value of money if there's less money in circulation? Goes up. What is that called? Is it inflation or deflation? D. What happens to prices? If your money goes up in value, it buys more. So prices do what? Once again, oh, prices are down. That's a nightmare. If you're a farmer, got to pay back your expenses and your debt, where are you going to find the money if prices drop? If you're a merchant and you borrowed money to buy a ship or a printing press, and now you got to pay that back, where do you get your money? You got to pay now. So back when the money was inflated, you got to come up with the same amount of money. And this is going to trigger a massive depression. The entire time before the American Revolution, the economy of the colonies will be depressed. Now, the colonies just kind of ignored it, as you can see from that 1771 piece of currency, but they already feel like we're being squeezed. So when you think about it, when you have the Stamp Act and you have already less money, it's really going to hurt because of the Currency Act. And then don't forget, they stole our land. They stole our land. So, debtors, farmers, speculators. Debtors, farmers, speculators, absolutely crushed. Think of it this way. If you owe $100 let's say in 1763, you borrowed $100. I'm just, or £100, whatever you want to say, whatever unit of value. No interest. 2 years later, you have to pay back your creditor $100. Yet there's now deflation. You see the problem? You're paying back money of greater value. Even if it's the same amount, you're paying back money of greater value. That's a big deal. I mean, think about it this way. If you're being paid the same amount today as you were being paid in 2020, we have inflation since 2020. We've had a lot of inflation. So what has happened to the value of your pay? Gone down. Even though it's the same amount, it can't buy as much. If you're paid the same next year as you are today, because now we're going to have about 3.5% inflation by next year, you got to pay it. Or vice versa, if it's deflation, you're paid the same if there's deflation, you got to pay increase. Of course, that means depression, it doesn't happen at that point. So, now, you might be thinking, what does this have to do with revolutionary American history, except for this immediate moment? This changes everything. Because of inflation or deflation. There'll be deflation in the South right before the Civil War. That will help the South lead to that decision that we have to secede, which everyone knew would start a Civil War. Why? Deflation. The Great Depression, deflation. Heck, the economic crash that you guys were born in was deflationary. Hugely deflation. Money supply affects everything. It only affects you for every single thing you do. Other than that, it's not that big of a deal. So, review again. Stamp Act, right? Stamp Act, Congress. This is all review from the video, right? Now, at first, 9 states went to the 9 colonies went to the Stamp Act. You see that little red and white stripe thing? They made it an informal flag. Almost none of them survived. There's a few ones that you can't even see, so I use the very generic, What is it going to become? Red and white stripes of the American flag. We'll copy the Stamp Act Congress. 13 stripes and 13 stars for each colony and state. And then each new state, they would add a star and a stripe. Then the flag got too big, so they cut it off. 15 went back to 13 for the original colonies and added a star after that. That's Civil War. They didn't know about the stripes, so they just guessed for that. So, Sons of Liberty, right? Force the boycott. Just review. We got that. This is review. Couple pictures of them protesting. Here's tarring and feathering. Right them out on a rail. 66, Stamp Act was repealed. So all this stuff is review. Okay. You remember the name of the You remember the name of the laws that were passed in 1767. Once again, they tried to tax. Okay, we had this in the video. Let's just make sure we review it. It's a Townshend Act. Once again, we're going to cut the taxes for the Navigation Act, but enforce them. We're not going to worry about this. Almost immediately, they started tarring and feathering. Here they are. They're pulling them. They set up a pole and they tied a rope around them and let them hang there for a day. Or they threw stuff at them. Pulling. What city Britain had to start quartering soldiers in because they wouldn't pay the taxes? You remember the city? Yeah, Boston. Very good. Boston. Start quartering troops in people's homes. Mention the video real fast. All right. Well, officers stayed in the homes. This is part of the policy. They wanted them in people's homes. They want them to watch people. If you have somebody in your home all the time, won't you be afraid to organize a Sons of Liberty meeting? If you have a private living right there. I mean, think how much differently you act when your parents are in the same room. Don't you? It's kind of like, okay, I gotta meet up expectation. Or when you're with your friends. Act differently, don't you? Same deal if there's soldiers all around. So, rich or an officer stayed with a family of the wealthy, what was a home like for the majority of people in Boston who didn't have very much money? About 50% of the population was homeless. But if you did have a home, for most people, what was it like? Wooden, pretty hastily built, they're all gone. You know, they just didn't last. You might have a chimney and smoked by the fire. 18 by 18, maybe at the biggest, 15 by 15 feet. You get the idea of the fit in this room. Very, very, very low ceilings because you got to keep the heat in. Boston's cold, really cold in the winter. This was during the mini ice age. So, fireplace. Now almost no room, and all of a sudden, here comes a private coming in and taking the place. Take part of your home. What's the sleeping situation like in 1707? These little homes. How many beds do you think they had? What? Why? No money, keep the heat in. So you might have a bed, a wooden plank. If you're poor, you had hay. If you're wealthy, you had straw mattress. A wealthier, you might have, like a husband and a wife, 2 or 3 kids, and a private. All in bed. They're there all the time. There's another thing. Think about it for a second. The soldiers now. Think about it for a second. Imagine how fast they'll start talking about what's happening. The soldiers away from the very harsh discipline of the army. And now they come into these homes who they don't want to be there. And they know they're hated. So, but they're in charge. They're now, get back to the bed. Same bed. Their ideas of privacy are much different than our ideas of privacy, obviously. Let's not ponder that too much, except for one basic thing. You might have, say, the wife, daughter, private. You get what I'm hinting at. You get it? How soon do you think the rumors will spread that this is happening? And it did happen. Horrible things happen. But they're going to soon say they're all doing it. So can you imagine how angry people would be? So they'll start yelling insults. They would tell British soldiers, do not go out at night alone. You'll be jumped. And then, what about jobs? The British soldiers don't make any money. Yet in their off hours, they don't make much money. They start taking any jobs at the colonial port, like rope making, that relatively unskilled. If also you have 1,000 more workers put into a market, what happens to wages? Drops. They're already poor, there's no money, and now they're poor. And they're living in our homes, and taking our stuff, and doing horrible things. Then, you're going to get attacks, fights, riots. They'll start screaming insults. And the insult that the soldiers hated the most, anybody know? Lobster back. They hated it. Why do they call them lobster backs? Good guess, but no. Good guess. If we cook lobster, they do turn red. It's even more insulting. I know it kind of seems almost humorous to us. What do you think discipline was like in the British Army? For the most minor offense, the cat of 9 tails would come out. If you're in the battle line and you turn your head, no, it's 4 to 5 lashes with the cat of 9 tails. You turn your head. They wanted the men to be more afraid of their sergeants than a musket ball hitting their face. If you're going to stand in front of the enemy at 40 paces, you've got to put all your rationality and throw it away. So they would whip and beat soldiers. What would their backs look like? You seen a lobster's back? Ridges, all the scars. So they're mocking the British soldiers for being hit. They're mocking the British soldiers for this. Thus, lobster backs. That's why 1770, the Boston Massacre. One more thing, 50% of the population is homeless. In the winter, when it would be bitterly cold, what would they do with them? How many people could this room hold? Think about a room about this big, just a building, hastily put together, they would collapse, a spark, they catch fire. That's what they put in the winter. That would be, they call it a poorhouse. Those different than the ones that are gonna come in the next century. But imagine here's a wall, and they attach a rope to this side, the wall, and string it across about this high to that wall. Yeah, everyone see the image of a rope? Then about a foot and a half later, another rope. So then we get the image of a bunch of ropes. People would come in at night, and they would walk down this row, shoulder to shoulder, then what? And they can't get money because the British are taking their jobs. They might get a home and they would lose it because of that. All these horrible things happen. Look at our life now. Who do they blame? The British soldiers. At least they're hoping they blame the British soldiers. And that would lead to the massacre. Who defended the soldiers? Remember that from the video? Yeah, John Adams. All right, very good. TIAC. So this is the big. The TIAC would be the last straw. And everybody incorrectly says it was the tax. It was not the tax. Here's the East India Company sign out like that one. East India Company was basically given the British colony of India, much like the Virginia Company was given Virginia way back in the 1620s. So the East India Company was losing money. So the thought was, we'll give them a monopoly on tea sales. Brits were already becoming addicted to tea, and they would be able to avoid some taxes. A monopoly in the power, they could avoid the taxes. Not all the taxes. And the taxes that would be levied, it'd be levied in the colonies, and the British East India Company would collect the taxes. Only merchants who had a license could sell the tea. And the British East India Company would only sell, there was a Dutch East India Company, that's why I have the B there. They would only give licenses to, okay, let's review. Patriots were more and more for separation from Britain. What did they call the people who wanted to stay with Britain? Remember that term? Loyalists. Only loyalists got the license. If you had any kind of patriot leaning, you're done. Or a known smuggler, you're done. What happened to the price of tea? If there's normally a monopoly, and it's a product that people want, plastic, the price will go up. But because the East India Company didn't have to pay half the taxes, the price actually dropped. And that's why Parliament thought nobody would complain. We're cutting the price of tea. That they had all dumped sugar in it and bought their tea for one. They thought no one would complain. How could you complain? We dropped the price. Who was mad? The smugglers. It undercuts the smugglers. The smugglers were making money avoiding the two taxes. But now it was an excise tax in Britain, and then the tax for the navigation acts in the colonies. It undercut. The most famous would be John Hancock. They mentioned him in the video, both videos. He would be given the president of the Senate because he was a very wealthy smuggler. He's avoiding the taxes. Here's the thing about smuggling something illegal. Usually it's avoiding a tax. The smugglers charge a premium for the danger they're in. That's how come organized crime gets involved in being illegal activities. In special topics, we're going to do a unit on the gangsters. Don't always do it second semesters, and we do gangsters in the 1920s who made a boatload of money because they had 1,000% tax on alcohol. Those selling illegal drugs, you pay for the danger. Now they're furious. So it was monopoly. The argument was, who's going to control our lives? They went there for their rights as Englishmen, and look what they're doing. We have British assistance, we have taxes, they've taken our land. It's not the tax going secondary, it was control. Here's an important T down the throat of a tax collector. Here is they have an S, but those miscreants, detestable. I just enjoy that in that. I don't know why I like it so much. Have you ever heard this argument before? You ever heard that term? Has anyone ever heard this? What's it mean? Oh, when you start going down speed. Once you allow this, and we allow them to control tax, what else would they control? Maybe our plantations, maybe our other issues, maybe our harbor, maybe they'll get rid of our government, maybe they'll take away all our rights. They'll get rid of our assembly. They will start dictating laws. If we allow this, it's only going to get worse. Look what they're going to do. They're going to take away everything you have. Take away our liberty, and we will be nothing more than slaves. And they said this over and over and over and over and over again. We will not be slaves. Now, this is an important point. They knew the worst condition you could be in was slavery. And this, we're talking 1770s. There's a myth going around that went around for years, like after the Civil War, and I still hear people saying it today, that they didn't know any better back when there was slavery in early colonial and American history because everyone had slaves and people didn't think it was bad. Are you kidding me? They all knew it was bad because they knew they did not want to be slaves. It was a nightmare. They did it, and it really bothered their morality, but they didn't care. So that's where we get the Tea Party. There are two ships that arrived in Boston Harbor, and they were scared to death to unload their tea. The Eleanor and the Beaver. They were just sitting anchored in the harbor. Now, the problem with sitting anchored in the harbor in 1773, you can't just all of a sudden go. You can't just put your sail. It's incredibly difficult. So the Eleanor and the Beaver, you don't even know them. I put them up there so I wouldn't forget. I forgot once and it made me mad. Getting that. Yeah. By the way, tea, don't think in terms, no, it wasn't tea bags. It was not loosely tea. To get it across the Pacific or the Indian Ocean to come back that way, they would put it in bricks. This big, about that thick, just smash it together and dry it. It'd be hard to make tea. You'd literally have to get a hammer. You kind of get this little powder, and then you dump it in and brew that in there. So it's not leaves, because they would just rot. So imagine these big rocks with these bricks. And sitting out there with all this tea. In North Hall, so that's pretty neat, huh? If you get a chance, go. They were riling people up. They were giving these speeches, and all these people from Boston were there. Then all of a sudden, the Sons of Liberty burst in dressed as Mohawk Indians. And they said, let's get them. Now, why do they dress up as Mohawks? Some of you might think they're trying to disguise. Oh, sure, maybe disguise some of their leader's face, but Mohawks lived here. Boston. If they ever knew it wasn't Mohawks. You know, I should add, anyway, the Mohawks did not wear their hair. Once here and then no hair, that's not a Mohawk. The way they dress. So if you see people wearing that haircut, that's because of US paratroopers in World War II. They dress their hair like that. But to American colonists, American Indians represent liberty. It's weird. They had a dichotomy. They wanted their land. I thought they were wasting it. But they've never seen people live so free. Just never seen it. So their thought was, oh, okay, they're wasting their land, but they have rights. Individual rights. It blew them away. They'll get rid of that idea, but it was a symbol. They wrote out, they dumped a bunch of tea over, 340 cases. They went to the Eleanor. They stormed out the Eleanor. The crew, about 20 men, tried to fight back, and they roughed them up and threw them over. And that's back when nobody knew how to swim. So it was pretty bad. They threw the tea over, burned the ship down to the waterline. On the Beaver, they saw this happening, and then they rowed to the Beaver. And the crew, anybody know what the crew did that time? Come on in. This is where we keep the tea. So they weren't beat up, they dumped the tea over. Britain went. Went nuts. And that's why you're gonna get all these pictures of tea. Tea. Here. By the way, you see the Mohawks? Do you see them? On the boat, right there? Snapple Company used to have that for tea, right? Right? Until a myth pre-internet. I'll tell you tomorrow. Tomorrow. Oh, I just got to give you your homework. Did I tell you your homework? Are you gonna be mad at me when I tell you your homework? Yeah. I don't care. You have to read the first 3 paragraphs of the Declaration of Independence. It's in the document section of your textbook. Those are called the appendix. Appendix 67. Read the first 3 paragraphs and focus on the philosophy for democracy. Just 3 paragraphs.
Which
Yeah. If anybody needs worksheet with the video, come here and get it. Sorry. I have.
oh,
Oh, yeah.
Lately.
In fact, I'll do this. I'll go to the declaration. Do you need this? Anybody else need this? All right, goodbye.
Taylor.
Anybody else? Anybody else? Anybody else? From Friday. You are.
When it's just you, because that I see you're like,
And you have your interview done?
I do. I have to rewatch it. There's a couple things I have to watch it and redo it because if I were to present right now with my notes, it would be like, oh yeah, so and I wouldn't know what I was talking about.
That's why it always is. Take a few minutes, just get it down
Yeah.
and
Oh, once I'm done, I can delete that 25-minute video on my camera roll.
who'd you interview again?
Oh, my grandpa.
Did it work out? Good, everything's, yeah.
Yeah. I'll have to summarize some of the lady answered his questions, but
That's the way it always is. You pick on what you think's most important. Yeah. So we have 100
I know 30,000.